What's going on, boys and girls? So this particular video is going to be from IonPC, who I've reacted to before. A short version is I know he's had some frustrations on either switching to Linux. I don't know the entire story. I just I got the vague overview of it, and I'm curious to see how it played out. So I kind of just sat back and let it play out as it would, because I have reacted to a few videos recently that people have been trying to switch to Linux, and they have been less than helpful about how they are switching, like context, etc. Make a video while they're angry, make a video while they're drunk, or whatever. Take your pick. The point is, I wanted to let it play out a little more than I did on the last few videos. So let's see what IonPC is working with. Hopefully, it's as good as his last one. Let's roll into it.
So apologies right ahead if I am much quieter in this video. I'm recording it pretty early in the morning at about 5:30. I've been up all night looking into different Linux distros and videos and whatnot. But I wanted to record this video because I got into a conversation with someone about it goes back to a similar point in a couple of videos ago that I made about how Chris from Chris Titus Tech made a video about Ubuntu being the devil and how no one should use it. And I kind of, the too long didn't watch of that video is, I said, you can't tell someone that they should move away from Windows and use Linux, and then they pick this distro, and you tell them, wait, no, not that distro, and telling that the choice they make is wrong.
And in fairness, you are 100% correct on that, because at the end of the day, regardless of what any community member, etc. may say, are they running Linux, GNU Linux, whatever? Is the pinning in the underneath of the OS Linux? Well, yeah. Then newsflash, stop the guys that get bitch and complain about you chose the wrong distro. Fuck off. I chose the right distro for me. That really is the mentality that the community is take, because at the end of the day, they're not running Windows and they're not running Mac OS. So what do you have to bitch about because they're not running a distro that you advertise for, shall we say? At the end of the day, I'm just glad they're using Linux over the other two.
I'm not gonna go into that a whole bunch. I'll probably link the previous video that I'm talking about in the description. And this is a little bit more of a continuation of that, but I'm going to elaborate a little more and make some more points, probably. Linux's greatest strength is also its downfall, and that's choice. There's so many distributions, and there's so many desktop environments, and so many different ways that you can customize a distribution. And people always say that's a good thing, people should have choice. The user should have options, and I completely agree. I'm not saying choice is a bad thing, but that's also why people won't move to Linux. And I'm not saying that's why people come to Linux and then they distro hop for a year, 2 years maybe, because that's not coming to Linux and then moving away and going back to Windows. You're still kind of on Linux at that point. What I'm talking about is someone like my grandmother, for instance, um, a demographic that could be easily overwhelmed by telling her how many choices she has when it comes to a Linux distribution. Telling her, here's Ubuntu, here's all these flavors that all have different desktop environments that all look different. Pick one. Um, she could probably pick one, but she would pick one without caring about the differences. She would pick one for the sake of they all do the same thing, so I'm just gonna pick the one that, I don't know, I'm gonna pick this one because it's blue, or I'm gonna pick Ubuntu, stock Ubuntu, because I don't know what mate means or whatever. And
Okay, now I understand the demographic that you're aiming at. You're talking. I'm not going to talk Joe Schmo end user, but you're talking the generic end user who computing is not their hobby. Computing is not their interest. You see computers as a tool, and if they can get work done with that tool, they don't give a shit about what's underneath it. It's about how you switch them, personally. So for me, the way I found that works best to switch somebody to Linux has been give them the applications that they would use on Linux on their prior OS first. Because really what happens is if you tell them, oh, you have, Firefox, which is on their Windows machine, and say if they do video editing and they only need like Kdenlive or Lightworks or whatever, if you put all that on their Windows machine first and you say, hey, all these applications you already use are over here too, they're going to transition a lot easier to whatever UI paradigm they have, because it's like if you go from Windows 10, 8, 7 to Mac OS, it's a slap in the face. It's a change in like paradigm shifting on how you have to think. Because, example, hitting the X button in Mac OS is not the same as hitting the X button in Windows. One closes the window, one kills the application and the window. So, navigation, global menus, etc. Like there's just a complete paradigm shift on both choices. So to say that people can't understand choice is, I want to say a fallacy, but really what it boils down to is people choose what they choose for the weirdest reasons. It's aesthetics, it's purple, it's blue, it's green, whatever. At the end of the day, your job, my job, people who do computing and technology enthusiasts, etc., what we should be doing is helping guide them to something that is more their flavor, more their speed, more their liking. If they say they like Windows, I would probably say stick them on something like a minimal plasma or something along those lines. You stick them on something that paradigm wise they might understand. Ubuntu Mate is another one that you can stick them on. If they're coming from a phone and tablet, they're going to understand. Those are newer users. They're going to understand, probably deepen better because of the way the App Store is designed and the UI is designed. It all depends on the user. So our job should be to help lead them to the right choice. So I don't think choice is the problem. I think people throwing all the choice in front of somebody is the problem.
And there are a lot of people that could say that that's fine. And that's, again, like, don't give her a bunch of choices. And I agree. But when you have people like Chris that say, you picked Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is the devil, that doesn't help people want to stay on Linux.
To your point, I'm okay. I've been kind of wishy-washy about this particular thing. When you have people like Chris Tech calling Ubuntu the devil, Chris Tech is a fucking douche. all the success in the world to you, Chris, but you can have opinions, but your opinion should have been something like, I don't run Ubuntu for X, Y, and Z. Not calling it the fucking devil, you goddamn shill for yourself. You want to be a LTT for Linux. Good for you. Can you not do the LTT clickbait? Because it's not helpful. What IonPC, and I'm interpreting here from what I'm gathering, is that those type of videos, granted, I don't think grandma's going to look at those kind of videos, don't really matter. But those are not helpful to the overall community by basically saying your distro is the back ass words of the Linux community. That's fucking stupid. What people should be doing is say, hey, you're running Ubuntu. Here's some helpful links that you might need. Ubuntu forums, ubuntu.com, et cetera, et cetera. DestinationLinux.network, BigDaddyLinux.com. There are so many good communities to go to, excuse me, that people really should be directing them to those communities instead of, how do I put that? Instead of letting an algorithm decide. Because last I looked, that particular video was like 121,000. Chris, thank you for turning 121,000 people potentially off to Linux. Jackass.
Alternatively, something like what I went through. I moved to Manjaro, and I got frustrated with it. Not necessarily with the distribution itself. I just got frustrated with not wanting to learn Linux, and I moved distros. Now, that's a little less to do with choice in a negative light. This is more of, this is the greatest strength, because I got frustrated with an Arch-based distribution that I didn't want to understand, or that I didn't take the time to understand, and I moved to an Ubuntu-based distribution that I'm very happy with, and I will probably continue using. But I think this is why this is one of the biggest reasons Linux cannot be used in environments like a school or some businesses, because you could tell, I could go to my school district and say, hey, if you guys are open to it, I can put Linux on the computers, and I can get the whole school up on Linux, and whatever. And they could say, okay, and then I could say, what distribution do you want? And they would just they would back out.
The fallacy, I understand where you're going with this. Hey, these are all the choices. You have to suggest and give the right distribution to the right people at the right time for the right choice. A school district, etc., they're going to want support. You're going to want a company to support them, not just an individual. Individual is great, but on the same note, you're also going to want to give them an understanding of what... You're going to want to have them understand that there is a company they can call. And that's where a lot of like the school districts and all the other people that whine, bitch, and complain that Linux is just a support forum, basically. That's really not the case, because you do have companies that are free distributions but are paid that you can go to. So the fallacy in your argument is you would go into that situation saying, hey, these are these two versions of Linux. You have Red Hat and you have Ubuntu. Which one do you want? They both have company support. They both look the same essentially and function kind of the same. At the end of the day, they're probably either going to go with Red Hat or they're going to go with Ubuntu, because those are the ones that have that support mechanism that they're always going to be more concerned about. And that's okay, because those are going to be the ones that they actually know about.
And again, one could argue that if I solely was the one moving them Linux, I should know the distribution to pick, I should pick that distro and stick with it, and whatever. But the concern I would have with that is someone from the Linux community, or multiple people from the Linux community, saying you should have put this distro on the computers, you should have used this distribution, whatever. And generally speaking, I'm not necessarily harping on the Linux community. I don't want this video to be just, I'm gonna criticize the Linux community, because generally the Linux community doesn't care.
So basically what I'm getting is, this is the my distro can beat up your distro, why did you choose this distro, that's the wrong distro mentality. That some in the Linux community think that only their choice and their personal preference matters, which, newsflash, it's like life. Your personal choice and personal preference is great for you. It's not meant for everybody else necessarily. If it works for somebody else, awesome. But force feeding it down somebody's throat doesn't make you any better than a religious zealot.
But what often happens as well is not necessarily someone says that you're wrong, or criticizes you, but they say, oh, that's nice, I love Linux Mint, however, I've been using MX Linux because I've been wanting to try Debian, or I just don't want something like Ubuntu based or whatever, and then you see MX Linux and you're like, oh, I want to try that, and you go to try it and you like it, and the other, I guess my third point, or my third scenario, is someone that distro hops because they keep looking at different distributions and liking what they see. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with distro hopping. Of course, I've tried several Linux distributions. I've tried Manjaro, MX Linux, Ubuntu, both LTS and non-LTS versions. I've tried Peppermint, I've tried Pop, I've tried Solus. So, by all means, I've distro hopped. But it's just the Linux community that comes back to that entices people to distro hop, because they see so many different options and they want to try it. And that's
okay. So the best way I can equate what you're talking to is the people who distro hop. Okay, there are people in the Linux community that look at the shiny aesthetics, etc. Everything's going to be a little different. Everything's going to look different. MX, Pop, Deep in Manjaro, take your pick. The one thing I found, as a former distro hop, I don't distro hop as much as I used to. Like, I try out distros, but I don't change my core base much anymore. I'm a Manjaro KDE or Plasma user now. And really what that boils down to, that choice, is after time and time again, finding something not right, something I don't like, something, etc. You just end up finding what works for you. The customization and the way I can set up Plasma is what works for me. I need the latest updates to Mesa and the kernel because those are the AMD performance increases, etc. with the GPU and CPU, because I have a Ryzen system. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is, if I use Ubuntu, that stuff is held back. So you really have to look at what your needs are to not distro hop. If you need stability, go with a stable static release. Rolling, if you need bleeding edge software. That's the best way I can put it. So I think what you're talking about is people finding what they need. Some people it's aesthetics, some people it's not. For me, it's a little bit of aesthetics. It's a little bit of the customization that I don't get with any of the other desktops.
Not necessarily a downfall. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also really hard to. The idea of a Linux and choosing a distro is you choose the distro and you stay with it. And for some people, that's difficult to do, myself included. And so I guess this is less so of here's a problem and I want to know a solution, or here's a problem the community needs to gather and come up with a solution. This is more of a video to invite discussion of, do you think that the massive choices we have with Linux can be negative for the community and for moving people over to Linux?
Short answer, no. I think it's a problem. As far as Linux in and of itself having the choice being a problem, no. As far as the community can be to its detriment because of how divisive the community can be. Because a lot of users, not all of them, but a lot of the Linux community put their personal preference and stamp on a distro and make that the recommendation. And instead of looking at a end user and what they need and their goals and etc. You cannot make recommendations based off personal preference. You have to give the options that are available and whittle down those options and direct the people to the choice that might be best for them. Unfortunately, because of those zealots, my distro can beat up your distro jackasses. My distro is better than your distro, etc. We don't get that a lot. We get, if there's a technical discussion about why somebody doesn't use something, that's a different story. But just to say, like Jackass said, Ubuntu is the devil and all the other stuff. That's totally not helpful. That degrades any conversation. So for me, I think directing the user to the right distro is what matters. And you can undercut the pain points of the distro based on the user's needs, and if you make the applications that they're going to be switching to on the platform they're going to be switching to available on the platform that they're currently using.
I just I want to interact with other people. This is a side note, by the way, just because I feel like that since I've been making more videos more frequently, I have a little bit more of an outlet for a community that can help and give some advice and whatever else. So this is off topic, but it is what I've been doing all throughout the night. Is I've been trying to figure out what distribution I want to put on an old laptop, and I want to try certain distributions, and particularly I want to try just customizing some particular distributions. I've been wanting to try Ubuntu LTS with the Numix Circle icon pack. I think that could be interesting, and so I've been wanting to think about that. Or do I put do I put elementary Juno on it? I've been wanting to try both distributions, and I could probably get Numix to work with elementary as well, considering that it's based on Ubuntu LTS. But my concerns would just be mainly battery life. I want to know what distributions um, would be best for getting the most battery possible. I have a new battery for the laptop that I ordered and am going to uh, plug into it once I figure out what distro I want to keep on that laptop. So,
Okay. One thing, I'm not sure if you're going to go into it. Specs of said machine would help tremendously as far as distro recommendations. I believe Elementary does an interesting way of handling power management. It's a little different. Tends to get better battery life. Pop OS, I would actually recommend. I'm using a big GNOME guy, but I would recommend Pop OS because a lot of System 76 machines are laptops.
so trying to get the most out of an old battery is not necessarily the objective. It's more of just if one distro that I want to choose would consume more power than a different one, then I want to give the laptop a best case scenario, if that makes sense. The three that I'm between right now are Ubuntu LCS, like I said, Elementary OS, and then KDE Neon. Mainly because all of those have a desktop environment that I'm very interested in. Obviously, I use GNOME with Pop OS, and I like GNOME quite a bit. I also love KDE quite a bit. I ran KDE, I ran Manjaro KDE on this computer for a bit, as well as my ThinkPad, and I loved customizing it.
KDE Neon, I love in principle. It's hard to. Oof. If you want to build a Plasma-based desktop on top of Ubuntu with very minimal applications installed, then KDE Neon is your way to go. Totally cool with that. But if you're more into stuff already, a certain level of stuff already being done for you, probably not the recommendation to go. It is bare Plasma on top of Ubuntu.
And so I'm wanting to try KDE Neon and getting into more customizing KDE, but of course Neon has Ubuntu as the core and it's meant to be stable, so on and so forth. So I'm open to any other.
In fairness, Neon it stays on the LTS base for Ubuntu, but it also tends to try to bring in the newest packages from KDE or Plasma.
Distributions too, but I'm just more into how is there any distribution that is there any of the distributions that I have laid out going to be really bad in terms of power management and battery and whatnot. So anyway, off topic for this particular video, but I figured that since I have an outlet with YouTube, I thought I'd just throw this in there. So just something to think about and discuss. Anyway.
All right, so for the most part, his biggest gripe is the community. Certain members of the community who do the my distro can beat up your distro crap. There's no wrong choice. Just find the right choice for the user. All it boils down to. So the later portion of the video, though, what are some recommendations for said laptop for IonPC? What one, in your experience, has the best battery life? Do you know, if you look at the distros he laid out, they are all Ubuntu based. So, with that in mind, I would recommend either Ubuntu or Debian based distros as recommendations. You can give out your own, but that's just my recommendation because that's where he seems to be comfortable with. So you guys know what to do. Patreon, Indigala, all the crap for that stuff is down below. I will catch you guys on the flip. Peace.